Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we're talking about something really serious, the call to the ministry. And let's be clear, this isn't about picking a career like any other. Our sources frame this as a weighty inquiry, a solemn quest. Getting this wrong has some pretty severe consequences, not just for the person, but for the entire church.
Listen to that language. The stakes are incredibly high. A mistaken call isn't just a personal blunder. No, it's called a fearful calamity for the man himself and a grievous affliction for the church he forces himself upon. This is exactly why figuring out if a call is genuine has to be taken with the utmost seriousness.
So, to help guide us on this solemn quest, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the nature of this inquiry itself. Second, that irresistible internal call. Third, the gifts you gotta have. Fourth, how the church makes its judgment. And finally, we'll look at the red flags, the signs of a mistaken call.
All right, first things first. We have to draw a really sharp line in the sand. Every single Christian has a duty to share the gospel. That's a given. But the specific office of a pastor, that's a whole different thing. We're talking about teaching, ruling, and dedicating your entire life to the work.
So on one hand, yeah, every believer has that general duty to spread the good news. But the pastoral office? That's distinct. It's a divine appointment. Think about the terms used in the Bible like steward or ambassador. Those words imply you've been given a commission from someone higher up. You don't just decide to take this role on your own. You have to be sent.
This quote just nails it. Can you imagine somebody showing up in another country, claiming to be an ambassador, but they have no credentials, no official papers from their government? They'd be laughed out of the room. Well, it's the same idea for someone who just takes up the office of pastor without being sent by God. It's absurd, and frankly, it's a dangerous spot to be in.
So if a man has to be sent, what's the very first sign? Well, it starts inside. It's this deep, powerful desire for the work of the ministry. But, and this is key, it's not just any old desire. The way this desire is described is just intense. It's not a mild preference. It's a raging thirst, an overwhelming craving. It's like a fire in your bones, this all-consuming passion that makes you feel like you have to preach the gospel. There's no other option.
This really brings it down to earth, doesn't it? If you could be perfectly happy and content in some other good, respectable job, then you are not the man for the ministry. A real, genuine call pretty much ruins you for anything else. Other pursuits just seem completely unsatisfying by comparison.
But even this incredibly strong desire has to be put to the test. The why behind it has to be pure. Is it really for God's glory and the good of other people's souls? Or is it secretly driven by selfish ambition, a desire for money, a need to be in the spotlight? Any hint of a selfish motive really contaminates the whole thing.
Okay, so let's say a man has this intense, pure desire. That's not enough by itself. It has to be coupled with the actual ability to do the work. A call from God isn't just a desire, it's an endowment. He gives you the gifts you need.
This is really the first practical test. Can the guy teach? Can he communicate God's word clearly in a way that people can understand? Now, sure, this gift can be developed over time, but some basic level of ability has to be there from the start. A man has to give himself a fair shot and prove, at least to himself and those close to him, that he has this fundamental skill.
And it's not just about being a good public speaker. The pastoral office requires a whole host of other qualities. We're talking about sound judgment, real courage, tenderness and sympathy, and yeah, even some administrative skills. A man also has to have his own doctrinal beliefs settled. He can't be a rookie who's still trying to figure out the basics.
So a man has the internal fire and he has the gifts. But even that isn't a complete picture. A personal conviction, no matter how strong, just isn't enough. That internal call absolutely requires an external confirmation, and that comes from the church.
So how does this whole confirmation thing happen? Well, it's a process. First, his gifts are put on trial, you could say, in front of the congregation. He preaches. Then the church leaders will examine his doctrine and his character. And this is critical. The congregation itself has to give its consent. And all the while, you should see God providentially opening the right doors.
The principle behind all this is actually pretty simple. The sheep will recognize the shepherd God has sent for them. If a man is truly called to lead a particular group of people, those people will recognize God's voice in his teaching. Their consent is a non-negotiable part of the process.
Now, on the flip side, it's just as crucial to be able to recognize the signs of a mistaken call. We have to be able to tell the difference between a true summons from God and a counterfeit one.
There are some really clear red flags.
Is the man running to the ministry just because he can't stand his secular job? That's a huge warning sign. So is a ton of zeal but not a lot of common sense. Or an inability to handle hardship. Or a raw ambition to be famous. Or just an unstable mind. All of these should make a person stop and think.
The ministry should never ever be seen as a fallback plan for people who couldn't cut it somewhere else. Actually, a man who is effective in ministry probably has the gifts to be successful in a lot of other areas. God's work calls for the very best men, not the ones who've simply run out of other options.
And in the end, time itself reveals a very practical test: fruitfulness. Is anyone actually being converted under his ministry? If a man preaches for years and years and no souls are won, it's a very strong sign that God did not send him. It's like his commission is missing its official seal.
So let's just summarize these two paths. A true call is marked by that intense, selfless desire, and it's backed up by real gifts and a solid character. Then it's confirmed by the church, and it results in actual spiritual fruit. A mistaken call, on the other hand, usually comes from ambition or just wanting to escape something else. It lacks the necessary gifts, God's people don't affirm it, and it leads to year after year of fruitlessness.
Which brings us right back to the central question in this whole solemn quest. For anyone who is even considering the ministry, the real question isn't, do I want to do this? The question is, has God himself set this fire in my bones? Is this desire a fire from heaven, or is it just a path you've chosen for yourself?